Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Joe and Joe Weather Show on this Sunday morning, the 23rd of January, 2022, as we do our morning show, which starts on Sunday mornings at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. The Joe and Joe Weather Show, as always, brought to you by Omni True Value Hardware, your superstore for everything you need to get you through this winter to make sure that your home and the area outside your home is clean and safe from snow and ice. They've got salt, they've got rock salt, tons of rock salt at the lowest prices anywhere in the tri-state area. That's what Omni looks like from the outside at 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon, and they've got everything you need in terms of equipment, snow blowers of 24 inch blade, 30-inch blade, spreaders, mag, ice pellets, and flakes, and the well-regarded Pelledo for snow melt products, along with shovels, ice melt, whatever you need. And there's your rock salt. So it's all there at Omni on Long Island, serving the New York, New Jersey tri-state area. 631 and beyond, by the way. 631-756-1125 is the phone number. And the website is
OmniTrueValue.com.
Yes.
Who said that?
I don't know. You did. So let me just right off the top, I just want to let everybody know that for those of you who are on the Meteorologist Joe Chaffee weather app, or if you want to be on the Meteorologist Joe Chaffee weather app, you can download it for free on Google Play or on the App Store. Those of you who've had the Apple version, there's been some problems for the last couple of months, but that's all fixed now and it's working. So make sure you got your notifications turned on just in case there's anything of important going on. And so I'm looking at everything that's happening in the short range and in the medium range and in the long range. And at least from the standpoint of the short range, we have three relatively weak weather systems coming through. One late today and tonight here in eastern Pennsylvania to southern New England, and another one which is tonight is a weak cold front. Tomorrow's more like a weak warm front, and there might be some snow showers with that. I thought, Joe, that it's one of these things where some places could get a whitening of the ground or a little bit more, and other places might see very little or nothing. So it's just going to be clusters of snow showers, and you got to keep an eye on the radar. So somebody's going to look outside and see it's snow covered, and they're going to panic. And maybe someone gets into a heavier snow shower if it shows up on the radar, and you wind up with a quick half an inch or so. And then the same for tomorrow night, the same idea. Tuesday's cold front that approaches, now that one looks pretty weak. There really isn't much with it other than clouds. So we get cold tomorrow, quick warm up on Tuesday, and then another cold air mass comes in for Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And then we look toward the weekend because these troughs that have been coming through, the one for the end of the week looks like the strongest of the bunch, but there's not a lot of clarity yet. There's some indications about which way we may go with this, but there's not a lot of clarity yet, and we're still seeing, as I like to put it, chess pieces being moved around.
I enjoyed yesterday's GFS, where they had the snow just beginning with that system next weekend as we cross over from the Hudson Valley into Connecticut, and then the snow gradually gets more and more intense as one headed eastward.
Right.
Until finally, when you got to Providence and Boston and Portland, Maine, you ended up with something like 1 to 1.5 feet of snow. So I said, that would be an interesting scenario, wouldn't it? But then again, I had to remind myself that was about a week away, and we're going to have so many flips between now and then. So why get excited about that just now?
Well, yeah, I've been saying over the last couple of days that tomorrow's probably a good day where we could start to get seriously interested. I think we could certainly go through today and take a look at what's going on in the upper atmosphere, and in terms of how the upper atmosphere is structured, because that is the driver, of course. And the models seem to be struggling whether we get a more intense upper air structure, what we like to call the a negatively tilted trough, and versus a positively tilted or a progressive system. And I know we throw those terms around, and I think I wanted to just kind of do this analogy. I'm going to see if I can do this. Hang on a second, because it's nice having a headset. So I got a broom. Okay, I got a broom. So how do we hold a broom mostly
Yeah.
when we're sweeping? We hold it, unless you're right-handed depending on whether you're right-handed or left-handed, you're going to sweep left to right or right to left. But for the sake of argument, let's say we all sweep going from left to right. So I'm going to I put my broom down. So you hold it at an angle like this. This is northeast. This is southwest. This is a positively tilted trough. So what happens? Let's say if I hold the broom close to the ground and sweep, I'm only going to get the dirt that's around the broom. It's not the most efficient way of doing things. So if we think of the dirt on your seldom swept floor as if we think of the dirt on your seldom swept floor as moisture, you're only going to be able to pick up so much moisture. And where's it going to go? Well, it's going to go pretty much the way you're going to move the broom, which is from left to right or from west to east. It's not going to pick up very much. It's not going to spread very far away from the bristles. It's just going to kind of stay concentrated. Now, as I make that tilt less positively tilted and I start to sweep up, I could sweep more efficiently. I could get more moisture. And in the sense that I'm picking up more dirt off your seldom swept floor, and that dirt is spreading out over a larger area. So that's what we refer to as a positively tilted. So what happens if we get to a negatively tilt? If you sweep like this, well, you're not going to sweep very well this way, but if you take your broom from a positively tilted position and then swing it to a negatively tilted position, what happens to all that dirt? It sweeps, it spreads out. You're
Yes.
right. You're expending all this energy. You're expending much more energy and spreading out that dirt. You also could sweep faster, so you can actually sweep up more dirt. So that's why when you see an upper trough when it's tilted like this or in that negatively tilted position, you get the surface lows wind up intensifying. You see the area of moisture really expand and grow. So that's why how the troughs are structured in the upper atmosphere are so important. I thought that would kind of explain, because we throw the terms around, and the more weather savvy folks get it. But this, I think, will probably help those who would like to, gain a better understanding of how the atmosphere works. That's kind of a good way to look at it.
Absolutely. That's an excellent analogy. I think that's very. What I was going to just simply say is that if you're looking at a pendulum on a grandfather clock, the positive tilt would be when the pendulum is tilted more to the left, and a negative tilt is tilted more to the right. But that you'd put more emphasis on the negative tilt because that generally is associated with intensifying and dramatically increasing storminess. But I like your and especially my wife, who is she believes in cleanliness is next to godliness.
Yes.
And so she would enjoy the analogy of cleanliness. And believe me, she hates when the floor is not all that clean. And she does a lot of, let's put it this way, she's been very negative in terms of the broom.
Yeah.
Through her life.
by the way, I woke up this morning 17 outside. We're now finally above 30. It's a cold day, but no wind and the blue skies and sunshine everywhere. Friday morning, actually Thursday night when I went to bed, Joe, I opened the front door to just kind of give a look outside, and I had a coating of snow. Some snow showers came down the mountains and put a nice little coating of snow. We dropped down into the low 20s, and I woke up Friday morning. There was a nice fresh coating everywhere, which certainly beats what I had the day or two before, which was waking up to a night where we had freezing drizzle all night, and everything was
Right.
covered in ice, and it didn't get above freezing until late in the afternoon. So you know, definitely looked pretty. So now we've got a nice day, and I'm happy about that. So let's get to, we got the NAM is already out. We've got the new GFS that's coming out and should be out far enough that we can at least take a look at what it's doing. So why don't we start with what's going on in the short term, of course, and we have the first of these three weak weather systems, and as a result, we've got winter weather advisories up. Just give me a moment here while I get the map up here, and we've got some winter weather advisories up to the west in western Pennsylvania and into Ohio and back up into northern Indiana, and still holding on to a few winter weather advisories around Chicago. Down in Florida, by the way, because with these cold highs, the way they've been coming down, we've been seeing these cold air masses drained cold air down to Florida, and they've got. I got to look at this, Joe, because they have wind chill advisories up for northeastern Florida, which would be right around
Yeah.
Jacksonville. So I just want to read. I just want to read how much their suffering is as far as these wind chills are concerned. No, I'm sorry, not wind chill. I take that back. I'm sorry. I just sometimes the colors throw me off. They have. I know in Jacksonville yesterday was a very cold day. I don't remember the specific numbers, but they've got freeze watches and freeze warnings up. So this is certainly, for Florida, that's a serious thing with the citrus crop. And I'll go a little further south. Let's see what's going on down on the central Florida coast. Um, Okay, so we've got freeze watches. Oh, they have a freeze watch, frost advisory, freeze warnings. They go pretty far south down through the central part of the state, and freeze watch, freeze warnings, frost advisories, rip current statements, high surf advisories. So they're not doing pretty well over there from that standpoint. And one more, we'll take one more shot further south and see what the areas around Miami, and see where all this cuts off. So the freeze watches looks like they cut off the frost advisories are west of West Palm Beach and Boca Raton, and also with the Southwest Florida inland away from Naples and Fort Myers and Everglades City. So this is a pretty this is a very, very cold air mass that's gone down pretty far south. Miami right now is a crisp. They have their layered coats on, Joe. It's 59 in Miami at the moment. 59.
Lovely. Lovely. I always tell people, if you're going to take a vacation and you think about going somewhere, don't go to Florida, but go to the Caribbean, because it never gets cold down there. If you go to Florida, case in point today, I mean, you're taking your chances, because there could be days just like what they're experiencing right now in Miami.
Yeah, Jacksonville's 43 at 11 o'clock in the morning. 43. That's cold.
I see the high tomorrow in Miami is expected to be between 65 and 70. It'll be sunny, but it's 65 to 70 with a north wind at 5 to 10 miles an hour. So maybe a little bit of a chill factor. Maybe it'll feel more like 60 down there on the beaches.
Right,
if you go to Miami tomorrow.
And if it was 65 to 70 up in the Northeast right now, everybody would be out in shorts and short sleeves and short pants. By comparison.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Everything is relative. Everything is relative.
Everything is relative. The body gets acclimated to whatever's around you after a day or so of whatever air mass you're dealing with. We've had this persistent flow from Canada that continues to bring down cold air mass after cold air mass. The problem for snow lovers is that the transition in between has been with these weak upper troughs. And then if you look, also if you watch what's going on in the northern stream, and also take a look at what's going on down here in the southern part of the jet stream, you have these upper troughs that are kind of moving along in the northern stream. You've got these upper troughs that are moving along in the southern stream. That's been taking those storms out to the northeast and well south and east of us, but nothing's phasing. you need that. You need something from the north to come down and do a little work with something in the south to make for a more efficient broom. Just to go back to that analogy from earlier, a more sweeping experience, a more efficient sweeping experience, and you're just not going to get it with a flow like this. Now the difference is at the end of the week, maybe your one and possibly your last chance before we see a longer term pattern change, maybe set in at the beginning of February, and I will get into that in a bit too. Meanwhile, on the radar, I'll give this a quick refresh. We actually have some echoes showing up aloft on the radar in northeastern Pennsylvania and parts of the middle Hudson Valley and the upper Hudson Valley we're looking at this. It's 11:16 Eastern time, but there's some steadier snow shower activity back coming off of Lake Ontario and off of Lake Erie into western New York, and also this cluster of snow showers in western Pennsylvania and over into Ohio. That area is going to hold together fairly well during the day today. The question is what happens after it moves into western New Jersey. Is it going to hold together, or is it going to fall apart? Models are kind of mixed on that, and I oftentimes think that when you get into a situation like that with respect to a forecast, you want to just be safe and put it in there and cover for the possibility that somebody winds up with maybe, as we said earlier, a heavier snow shower that whitens the ground or a little bit more. But it shouldn't be more than that because the systems are rather weak. And by the way, in terms of total snowfall from these three systems over the next 3 days in western Pennsylvania, this is spread out into today and tomorrow, and less so on Tuesday, not really much on Tuesday, but for today and tomorrow's system, if you go into the western half of Pennsylvania, back into Ohio, you're going to put down in some places 8 to 12 inches of snow from Cleveland along the lakeshore into southwestern New York. Some of that's going to be lake effect. Youngstown forecast to get 8, Columbus 4, but again, this is snow that is Mansfield 7. Pittsburgh, probably about 5 or 6. I'm sorry, 4 at Pittsburgh is the bullseye. 6 or 7 as you go further north. Altoona 3, Williamsport 2, and then you start to get into the numbers here as you go close to us for today and tomorrow. It's basically a coating to an inch. The only thing I probably would have done different than the Weather Service did is I probably would have they've extended this a little bit this morning. I would have probably brought it down to include Long Island and most of New Jersey, just to be on the safe side from the standpoint of covering in the forecast.
Sure, but you never know where a snow shower is going to really end up. Sometimes they hold on, sometimes they hang on for a longer interval of time, and if they're especially condensed or concentrated, you could pick up, again, a quickie coating with some of these things. So yeah, I would agree with you. Why not just hold on to the threat right on down to the low end of New York State, the city, and Long Island, because you never really know with these things.
Yeah, and some of the short range models actually have a fairly decent looking cluster of snow showers moving through overnight for some of the coastal areas. So again, I included it for everybody. By the way, Joe Rayo is monitoring the chat board today. So if you have anything to say or any questions, just by all means, please do. And welcome to those of you who are watching the show for the first time. This is our Sunday morning version of the Joe and Joe Weather Show, and we are usually on 5 days a week from Sunday through Thursday. And Monday through Thursday, we are on at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. So you can subscribe to my YouTube channel using your Gmail account and set your notifications on. So this way you get notified every time the Joe and Joe Weather Show is on, and you seldom miss it. There's the surface map from last night with the next cold front approaching. We'll take a look at we might have the 15Z map. Might we have it? No, we have the 12Z. But your next cold front is already into western New York. There's a little wave there in northern Indiana on the front, and you've got a cold high with double-digit below zero readings this morning at 7 a.m. I see some minus 22s, minus 26, looks like up in northwestern Minnesota. I'm not sure if that's Fargo. North Dakota, that's I think might be minus 20. So that's a a decent shot of cold air. Obviously, we're not going to get that cold, but we are going to get we're going to see our temperatures inch up today a little bit, and then they're going to go down a little bit tomorrow. Then another, again, that warm front for tomorrow night. We warm up a bit on Tuesday, and then a colder air mass, another colder air mass for Wednesday through Friday. So that's been the pattern the last couple of weeks, and that just is going to roll on this week.
And one of the people on the chat board said, Joe, that they love the sound of your new mic. You sound like an airline pilot coming over the intercom on and telling everybody in the cabin what's going on.
Well, I hope that means it's relatively clear. Well,
that's clear. It's clear for me. It sounds like, yeah, you do have that sound to your voice, and it's nice. No, it's on some days you sounded like you were talking and you were clear, but you were inside of a barrel. But
right,
this is perfect.
Yeah, no, I definitely and I got like a high quality. I spent a little money to get this higher quality headset, so I'm happy with it. And I wouldn't be able to get up and do the broom analogy like I did earlier if I weren't able to maneuver around. And you know what? Thankfully, it was easy to install. I didn't have any problems with the installation once I solved that little issue on my computer with what was controlling the audio settings. It worked fine. WPC, our friends at WPC with their snowfall probabilities, and we're going to give this a quick refresh too, just in case they put out something new, which they do sometimes. And this is the probability of at least 2 inches. So clearly they don't think in the next 72 hours. So clearly they do not think that 2 inches is going to get anywhere close to our area. You have to go, if you want to use the 40 to 50% line, that would be the blue, the darkest blue, and then the colors that go over to the red are 95% to 100% for at least 2. You can see how they're looking at it over the next 3 days. And if we take a look at the probability for at least 4, high probabilities along the lakeshore there in Ohio, around Cleveland, on up toward Erie. But still a fairly wide area of a 50% chance of at least 4, and that extends into western Pennsylvania and covers the northern half of Ohio and goes into southwest New York, and also the areas around Lake Ontario on the east shores of Lake Ontario. Let's call it the southeast shores of Lake Ontario, because depending on the wind direction, that really determines where you get any kind of additional lake effect. On the long range, WPC has the probabilities Friday and Saturday. Now I'm not, this is before the overnight guidance was issued, so they not only have not seen any of the new guidance in their forecast, but this goes before last night's GFS and last night's European were in. So they have a 10 to 30% chance of at least 2.5 inches of the equivalent of snow and sleet. This is for Friday into Saturday from eastern North Carolina, northeast up through New Jersey and into, but not that far north and west of the coast. If you go on the other side of the state line of New Jersey and Pennsylvania, there's nothing. Kind of maneuvers its way up the Hudson Valley to an extent, southern New England, and then over on up into Maine. And then for the next time period, this is from Saturday into Sunday, eastern Virginia. Now they move the chance into eastern Pennsylvania on up to the northeast. Now, look, I know a lot of you have already seen the models and how they've been going back and forth. So, obviously, if there's an out-to-sea solution, this forecast ain't going to happen. So this is what WPC is doing. And again, this is based on now a couple of model cycles ago. They'll update that. Usually, sometimes they update that in the late afternoon if there's stuff going on. Sometimes they don't update it until sometime later in the evening. But we'll see what they do with this later. In the meantime, here's your system for today, late today and tonight. You go into this evening, Joe, and there's a fairly on the NAM anyway. You know what I think? I think it's better I probably go close up. and then we're going to switch over to the new GFS and see what adventures that brings us. So the NAM actually, it was kind of funny yesterday because on the runs of the NAM, when the snow reached the border of New Jersey and Pennsylvania, it was like a solid area of coverage over Pennsylvania. And then as you went through the evening and overnight hours, it created, it was as if there was a boilerplate over New Jersey, Long Island, the Hudson Valley, and Connecticut. All of a sudden, the snow just fell apart. Some of it went well to the north, a little bit went well to the south, and nothing happened. And in the last, couple of runs, it's kind of starting to pick up on the idea that maybe these snow showers will hold together. But again, you notice it's they're broken up in clusters. Some areas get them, some areas don't, and I think that's the way to go. If we look at the HRRR for what it's worth, which sometimes tends to be a little overdone with this sort of stuff, it's got this area, and then it starts to shrink a bit as it reaches the coastline, but enough of it holds together, and it seems to want to favor a decent, at least several hours of snow shower activity, Joe, for the Hudson Valley and Long Island tonight, right into at least 4 or 5 a.m. tomorrow morning before it's all said and done.
Well, I would agree. And of course, with the way the temperatures are and with the way the ground is, you don't need a whole heck of a lot of snow shower activity to pick up an accumulation. My hope is it'll be something less than at least a half an inch, maybe just a coating, because again, if it goes on for a long enough interval of time, you could pick up, enough to have to get out there with your broom and shovel. And that is certainly the possibility overnight tonight. But as you said, the HRRR sometimes tends to overdo on systems like this. I did see the FOOS on the NAM, and they gave us maybe a few hundredths of an inch at most. So you really can't make all that much snow, even from a few hundredths of an inch, no matter how cold it is. But again, don't be surprised you get outside tomorrow morning that you may need your snow brush because there may be a little bit of a slight accumulation out there.
All right, running through the NAM after tonight is the next system. And by the way, bear in mind that the fact that we have a lot of these systems in the flow is not conducive to major storm development, at least for the first half of this week. There's just too much, there's too much junk running around. There's a low in the Bahamas. There's a low that forms down there in the Gulf of Mexico. You can see that going back. And there's a low that's well out east into the Atlantic all week. And then you have the northern stream systems here that are also all week. And again, not much phasing going on here. The system for tomorrow night, again, this is more of a warm front type situation, a weak warm front. So we have another situation where the model is generating an area of what looks like light snow. It comes through, kind of cuts off there in the northern half of New Jersey, northeastern Pennsylvania, into New England and upstate New York. Maybe that produces, especially inland, some places could wind up with maybe a couple of inches out of it. Warm fronts can be tricky sometimes, and you can get surprises from those. But I'm not expecting anything here down further south. And then late in the day Tuesday, there's this Gulf low that's moving into North Florida. It's very weak. The Arctic boundary, the cold front that comes through, also very weak. See, it generates a little bit of rain there, southern New Jersey and offshore. Yesterday, the NAM on one of the runs went crazy with all this dark blue snow all over the place, but it really didn't have any support from any of the other models. And then here comes the next cold high that builds right on in for Wednesday and into Thursday. And then if you look in the upper left, you start to see what is the beginnings of the system for the end of the week and going into the weekend. So now let's switch to the GFS, which is out far enough, and I'm going to be looking.
Yes.
Joe and I are going to be looking at this for the first time, and then we're going to examine.
I've already seen it.
All right, I have not. So let me be surprised. I'm going to think from what I've seen with regards to the icon and what the middle runs did last night that it's going to still be kind of an out-to-sea type of solution. But, again, I might be shocked. Who knows? Let's I'm stuck at 90 hours here. Oh, now I got 96. So here we are for Thursday. I'm going to hang on. Let me shut a window here. Let me get rid of stuff that I know is probably draining. Uh, uh, oh, yeah, okay, now we can move it along. And there's your high moving off the Virginia coast. It goes out. There's another Arctic boundary that approaches on Friday. This is already a little different, so let me see. Maybe not. Cold front, another Arctic front, and you're going to need that to happen because you got to the cold air mass for Wednesday and Thursday goes out, so you're going to need another push of cold air to come in, which you get, and seeing some lighter snows here uh, with that boundary that sort of stalls out. So now we're into Friday evening. Oh, so there's your low Friday evening, well east of the Georgia coast, and it swings mostly east and offshore, and it goes out. Okay, so let's look at why it's doing this. And by the way, the fact that yesterday, Joe, in one of the runs, and I'm going to go to that right now. I'm going to go to the 18Z run from yesterday afternoon because I think this is, this is the one that basically, gave 1 to 2 feet from northeast Georgia all the way up into New England. But I want to show it to illustrate why it's probably wrong. Okay, I'm not 100% sure it's wrong, but I'm pretty sure that we're not going to get this. But looking at this, the system for the end of the week was much slower. And that was very important because you have this system coming through Thursday night and Friday. If that doesn't get out of the way, it's going to suppress the system that's behind it. There's only going to be so much room. And on the other hand, yesterday on the late afternoon run, and we've seen a couple of runs like this in the past several days, where the upper air was much more dynamic. And here you have a strong storm developing in the northeast Gulf of Mexico that winds up going straight up the east coast. And as I said, buried everybody from northeast Virginia all the way up into New England. This would have been, this is obviously a major snowstorm for the East Coast from south to north. If this were to verify, takes a track right to the benchmark, Joe. It took a track right to 40 and 70, and everybody gets a foot plus. Now, why did it do that? Okay, let's go back to that the broom analogy when we go to a negatively tilted trough, and where we're going from a trough or your broom goes from the upper left to the lower right, and you're sweeping it really quickly. Okay, watch the trough as it comes in, and again, it's a day slower here. All right, with what's going on, the East Coast trough, the trough in the east, actually, you can't really find it. It's just not there. So all this energy piled down, and if you notice right here at this point, the axis of the trough, like right along 80 degrees, and then the upper low lifts up to the north as another system comes down from the north. It picks it up and like a lever or a lever, just pulls it up the east coast. Okay, that's your negatively tilted trough setup right here. Okay, right there. Hang on, let me get rid of that. Like this, and we lift it up, and it just goes crazy. And that's why you wound up, the model did what it did. Now let me go back. Let's go to Friday morning, which already is different from what the GFS was showing yesterday. Friday morning, there's your new trough that's going to make your storm along the East Coast. Okay, your flow is west southwest. Again, this is yesterday. Now I'll switch to today, just to give you so you can see the comparison for the same time frame, and you'll now notice the difference here. Look at this trough that's coming down. It's faster. It's also it's much broader You could already see on the old run that there was a sharper definition to the trough as it was dropping down further to the west. This is much faster, and what's the tilt on it, folks? It's that positively tilted broom tilt that we were talking about. And as it swings to the east coast, it doesn't really get neutral until it's right on the coast. Okay?
Right.
And that's the issue here. You need the trough to be getting sharp and neutral back in somewhere in eastern Ohio, eastern Kentucky, and that where I drew it might be just a handful of miles too far to the west. Maybe you want it somewhere in between, but you want that neutral tilt at least at 80 degrees west. You can't have it at 75 because then it's going to go negative when it's way out, and that's what it does. It goes negative when it goes way out into the. Actually, it doesn't even really go negative. It stays neutral, which is enough to get the storm at least to strengthen. But it doesn't strengthen down to those ridiculous pressures that we saw on the prior run. So the bottom line is, Joe, that it's too progressive. It's too progressive. It's too fast. Too many short waves running around, and unless that system that's coming down that's going to make this happen is here's a wider view, by the way. There's your trough Thursday morning. It goes out, and now again, you can see what's going on up in eastern Canada. There's an upper low that's moving into from Hudson Bay to Labrador. It just overwhelms. It just keeps it too broad, and it doesn't get sharp until it's already well past the coastline. Unless we see this go back to something that resembles what it did yesterday, which was a less progressive, more negatively tilted look. You're going to have a storm that's going to develop that's going to go pretty much out to sea.
A deja vu of what we had yesterday, by the way, at least relative to where we are. Not necessarily for the Carolinas and who got iced over, and places in Virginia, coastal Virginia, that had quite a bit of snow. Now, another thing to point out, Joe, is that we're still 6 days out.
Yes.
And there's so much that can happen between now and then. Really, we won't know the facts as to what is going to happen until we're within 3 days. So maybe right. Wednesday or Thursday of this upcoming week, we'll be able to say with more certainty or surety as to what is likely to happen. But until then, as I said at the top of the show, there's a lot of there's a lot of room for waffling, if you will, a lot of room for flipping.
Oh, absolutely, no question. I mean, we're talking about the trough being on the coast at hour 144, 150, and if you recall from the storm from a week ago, remember when we had the offshore tracks, and then then we had that the two radical runs that the two runs that radically shifted the storm to an inland track. I mean, that happened inside the 120-hour time frame. I'm not completely closing the door on this. All I'm doing here is really illustrating what the issues are in terms of what's going on the upper air, and there are issues. I mean, if you're looking for something, or at least some sort of substantial snowfall, right now, from what you're looking at, you've got issues in order to pull that off. So what you're going to look for is the upper trough that's coming for the end of the week has to be slower. It has to be deeper and more defined. The trough has to drop further west. You want to see it drop in the western Great Lakes down into the middle Mississippi Valley on its initial approach, and you want it to see it sharpen up when it reaches, say, eastern Ohio, western Pennsylvania, before it lifts the storm up northeastward up the coastline. Because if you don't have that, it ain't going to happen. It just ain't going to happen.
And don't forget that on Martin Luther King Day 1 week ago, last Monday, the European came out with a solution that would have brought a humongous snowstorm for the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast. Everybody jumped on that and said, there it is. There's the big one that we've been waiting for. And of course, what happened? In the days that followed, the European went, well, I don't think
so.
Well,
in the days that followed, how about the very next run?
Yes.
Really,
exactly.
How about the very next?
But there were people who are holding on. People who saw the Monday run of the European were holding on to the hope that was it, and that in the next few runs that didn't quite agree with that.
Right.
They said, well, this is just a it doesn't matter. It's going to go back to the Monday solution, and it never did.
No.
But and even as I mentioned on Thursday, there were still people on the web who were saying models having difficulty in ferreting all this out. I said, what do you mean they're having difficulty? By Thursday, they were all on the same page that the darn thing wasn't going to hit us, but they were still hoping that the Monday solution would rear its head again, but it never did.
The inconsistency of the European has really been remarkable to me because I can't remember. I can't remember it. I hate using the term flip-flopping because I really don't think it's flip-flopping. It's that's a really simplistic way of looking at what's going on in the atmosphere. It's a matter of seeing where all how the model handles troughs and ridges from run to run, and obviously you're going to have changes in strength and position and rate of movement, and that impacts if one thing changes, everything impacts down the road. There always used to be a sense, though, when you looked at the European over its 10-day time frame of a little bit more of there used to be a sense of not complete consistency, but you could get a good flavor for where things were going on that model. Now it's you get a major storm that's off the Mid-Atlantic coast on one run, then it's 700 miles to the east on the next run, or it may just be completely gone. That sort of thing was something that the European never really used to do, or if it did, it didn't do it very often. It certainly did it far less than the GFS did. But I don't know, Joe. In the last, I would say at least the last year, it's been, and particularly the last 5 or 6 months, it's just been horribly inconsistent on a lot of things. Even in the short range, it's just been not picking up things until the last minute. I don't know. I don't have a whole lot of confidence anymore in what it does, especially when it does different, something different from what the other models are doing.
And James Davidson on the chat board says all these snowstorm threats most of the time always go too far off the coast usually, and we just can't get a storm moving up the coast. Unfortunately, here in central, now this is, I'm wondering whether James suffered a little bit of amnesia in this final statement of his. He said, here in central and southern New Jersey, always a miss. James, do you not remember what happened in central and southern Jersey just a couple of weeks ago? Did you not remember that?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. It's hard.
Serves me correctly. Yeah, my memory serves me correctly that I'm sitting here in New York City or in the Hudson Valley, with an air mass that was too cold, too dry, didn't get a flake. And meanwhile, you folks down in central and southern Jersey got walloped with anywhere from 4 to 8 inches of snow. Always a miss, James? I think not always.
Well, and just to add to that, I just the chairman sent me this, which I thought was very interesting. These are the top 40 locations as a percentage of above normal snowfall through January 22nd. Okay, and remember, remember where we are geographically. We are not around the Great Lakes. And dealing with lake effect, we are not, up in the western part of the United States where you get into these patterns where it snows 100 inches at a time. Okay, our snowfall normals are what they are, but relative to normal, it's hard to make the argument that it's always a miss. Atlantic City right now has 17.2 inches of snow for the season total. Their average snowfall to date is only 7.2. So they're running 130, almost 140% above normal. Okay, so it's kind of hard to argue the point that, like you said, that there's always a miss. Washington, D.C. has a foot for the season, 146% of normal. Yeah, most of the cities on here on this list, it's a kind of interesting list because it's the Tennessee Valley, it's the Mid-Atlantic states, it's Lexington, Kentucky, for example, 14 inches versus 5.4. Charlotte, North Carolina, 4.1 versus 1.6.
Right.
Medford, Oregon is on the list, 4.5 versus 1.8. Now, it's a small number. Memphis, Tennessee, the normal snowfall today is 0.6 of an inch. They have 2.8, so that's 366.7% over the normal. Columbia Metro, South Carolina, 2 inches versus a half an inch, 300%. Greenville, South Carolina, 6.5. Harrison, Arkansas, 13.3, 200% of normal. Yeah, so we're looking at sizable snow amounts as a percentage of normal, far higher. But the geographic areas, most the mid-Atlantic states, the interior Southeast, the Tennessee Valley, and then also parts of the Northern Plains, and into back over to say Wyoming. A couple of stations in Wyoming show up on the list, and then a smattering up in the Pacific Northwest. I do not see downtown Seattle here. Let me just I always like to look at Seattle. Knoxville, Huntington, West Virginia, Memphis Airport 1.7 versus zero point 0.9, Norfolk, Virginia 6.7 versus 3.4, 97% above normal. Asheville 10.2. And by the way, that's just probably in downtown Asheville. There's every bit of double and triple that amount in the mountains. As I still got snow-covered mountains here up at 4,000 and 5,000 feet. So I know that if there's got to be at least a half a foot plus up there, if not more. So I'm thinking up by Asheville, there's probably about 1 to 2 feet at the very least up at the higher peaks up in the mountains in western North Carolina. So thanks to the chairman for sending me this. It definitely made sense to take a look at this today. And by the way, now I want to look at the long range, because we've been, when it's all said and done, we would have been we got into this pattern probably just right after New Year's Day. So it's lasted the better part of 4 weeks. It'll probably last. It's going to last another week to 10 days, and then it's going to change, which is 5 weeks in the same pattern is that's a long stretch. So you're bound to have it change. And as I'm looking at the 6C run, because that's the last one that we have a full run of. And after the storm goes by next weekend, you start to see there's one more trough that swings into the eastern part of the United States around February 1st or 2nd, but you can already see the flow across the southern half of the United States becomes westerly, and then gradually, as the upper low in Hudson Bay, you begin to develop a trough down into the western part of the United States. And while you don't have a screaming ridge in the east, it's on the fly. I guess we can call it. It's starting to push up a little bit at the end of the period, but I've seen a few runs where it was just kind of flat across the Gulf of Mexico and over Florida. We do get into a ridge position as we move beyond, say, February 2nd or 3rd, and the model's been doing this for the better part of a week now, except for a couple of odd runs. But the trough wants to go back in the west. And one of the things that's happening that's really important. If you think back to December, remember the Aleutian Ridge, and it disappeared. It went up into Siberia, and it set the ball rolling for getting the cold pattern here in the east. Well, the Aleutian Ridge is back. Now, I would say this to you, is that the model does show. And obviously this is in the long range. We don't know if it's real or not. The Aleutian Ridge does wind up migrating back northward. So I think you could make an argument that in terms of going into this ridge east trough west type pattern, that it's not going to be one that's going to last too long. I don't know that for sure. I mean, I'm just kind of openly speculating. I don't like to wipe out whole months or 6-week time frames, although you could certainly make the case that that's going to happen. It's very interesting, Joe. At the end of the forecast period, just looking at the hemispheric view, the entire Arctic is under above normal pressures. So that would imply a very strong negative Arctic oscillation, which kind of that might throw a little bit of a what's the word I'm looking for? That might throw an interesting, well, not so much a monkey wrench, but it might offer an interesting twist to things after this pattern gets established. And with the other thing I want to look at is the polar vortex, because there is a change in how the polar vortex is oriented in this scenario. It's been, if you watch the 10 millibar, it really does. I'm starting to really get a sense of things here with looking at the 10 millibar. But if you look at the orientation of the upper polar vortex is sitting up there near the North Pole, but there's a trough that goes down into the eastern part of the United States. So we're looking at Thursday of this week. So here's this is how your air is coming from Siberia down across the Arctic into northwest Canada and down into the northeastern United States. That polar vortex starts to rotate around and pull up. It hangs around a little bit. This is like February 3rd and 4th. But when we go beyond that, now look at where the flow is. Now we're looking at February 8th. Now your flow is coming from, say, central Siberia across the Arctic Ocean, but it's going into western Canada and into the western part of the United States. So it's changing up there. What's happening down at the lower levels? You're getting that ridge going into the east. You got almost a southern, a flow that's more southwesterly in the eastern part of the United States in the stratosphere. Now, what I would just say is, if you look at how the upper low is migrating, because it is migrating into northwest Canada, perhaps the next thing to happen is that it starts to tilt back into the eastern states to an extent, when we get into the middle part of February and beyond. I'm just openly speculating. I don't know if that's the case. I'm generally not a long-range guy. I like to learn new things, but I've always said that I've never been really good at getting my head wrapped around the long range. So, yeah, take it with a big grain of salt in terms of my analysis here. I could be wrong. I defer to those who work with this stuff on a regular basis, as being able to give you a much better view and a much more valid opinion on where we go beyond, say, the 2-week time frame.
Yeah, I could just imagine somebody from the Climate Prediction Center sitting one of us or both of us down. We would explain our reasoning for,
because they do watch the show
what you just said.
Right. They do watch our show very carefully.
No, but what I'm saying is that these people, these men, these women who work at that particular division of NOAA would listen to our explanation or listen to our thoughts as to what is going to come our way in the coming weeks and say, well, you're absolutely right. We agree with you to a certain extent, but now take a look at this. And they may show us something that we didn't consider.
Right.
And that they, having been there or having worked there for all of these years, would say, this is what has always been missed by all of you operational forecasters, which we mix in and we believe is going to happen. So you're right. And it's the same thing, not just for long-range forecasts, but it's the same thing if we went to Norman, Oklahoma, and talked to the folks who are in charge at the Storm Prediction Center. They deal with thunderstorms and possible severe weather on a daily basis. They are experts. We, as I've said before, we basically are GPs. We're general practitioners. We know enough to be able to look at various solutions and various facets of the weather, severe weather, long-range weather, cold weather, hot weather, and make a judgment call. But we're not experts specifically in any one field. Hurricane forecasting, and that's why the folks at NOAA have these various divisions set up for people who are specifically, and the people at the CPC, Joe's Climate Prediction Center, are saying in the eastern third of the country for February, we're going to be seeing a noticeable warm up in temperatures. Lee Goldberg on Channel 7 the other night teased his audience by saying, and wait till you see what we have in store for February, and showed the CPC map showing above normal temperatures and saying we're going to have a major pattern change coming in February. Now, hopefully that'll happen for the folks at CPC and also for Lee Goldberg, who is promising this after such a long stretch of cold weather. But again, these things sometimes don't always work out.
No, and going back to winters like 2013, 14, and 14, 15, where you were essentially in the same pattern with very, very minor breaks. When I say minor breaks, we're talking about a day or at most two for the better part of the period from December right through March in 13-14, and in 14-15 it was basically from mid-January right to the end of March. Those are rare events. Those winters they're really rare. You get those once every 20 years or so, and it was remarkable that we actually had two back-to-back winters like that. So getting a 5-week pattern like we've had where it's been cold, but as we've said many times, you can get in a cold pattern. It doesn't do you any good if the troughs and the ridges are not exactly in the right places when it comes to snow. So and you know what? It's been great for the mid-Atlantic. It's been great for the interior southeast, even the coastal southeast, with the snow and ice that they got yesterday and Friday night into Saturday. I mean, the pattern's been perfect for them. I've gotten about, for me, up in the mountains here, 3+ inches for the season so far, but nearby and up at the higher elevations, another 1,000 feet up, 500 to 1,000 feet up, the snow amounts are have been much more substantial. So again, you can have all the cold air you want, but if you get overwhelmed by cold air, and by the way, 13, 14, 14, 15, what was incredible about those two winters, Joe, as I recall. And by the way, while it's on my mind, let me just stop my thought for a second. 100 likes. Thank you very much for getting us over the 100 likes without even asking. So if you like our show, definitely hit the like button. Joe and I love that. And Leon Probitsky and Richard Comenzo. Richard, I think you might be new to the channel on the chat board, but welcome, and both of you, thank you for hitting super chat, hitting the super chat tip jar. Joe and I definitely appreciate that. But going back to what I said in 13, 14, 14, 15, what was remarkable about those two winters was the fact that, if you remember, Joe, almost every snow system that we had in that stretch, the temperatures were in the teens. And in some cases, in the low teens. Those two winters were really like sitting up in the Arctic. Most of the time down here, when we get heavier snows, we're sitting with temperatures between, upper 20s, low 30s, maybe sometimes mid 20s, occasionally lower 20s. But every single storm in that stretch, we were so deep in the cold air. And the argument is, well, when you're too deep in the cold air, you really can't have any snow. Not if the troughs and ridges are set up in the right place. And in that particular winter, they were definitely set up in the right place for these sort of, the types of events that you normally see, say, in upstate New York or in northern New England. It was really remarkable. I love those. Those are my two favorite winters, by the way, in terms of total snowfall production, and also in terms of the fact that we had those really big. I can remember driving home in one of the 1-foot plus snowstorms. I believe it was in the one maybe in 15, where we had S plus and temperatures were sitting at around 13, 14 degrees. It was about as powdery as snow as you'll ever get.
Yes, I was going to say the puff factor in those years, 13 and 14, the puff factor was a big factor in helping to puff up or build up the snow accumulations. I was thinking, in fact, last week, in fact, Joe, we had the snow changing to ice and finally the rain. And as I said, the next morning, I had to get rid of about 3 inches of spackle on my driveway. As I was pushing that snowblower, I was thinking about the years 13 and 14 and saying, boy, at least if we had snow like that, it would be a lot easier to get rid of with a snowblower. The snowblower probably would have tossed that stuff 30, 40, 50 feet. Here, I'm like just dredging all of that stuff. So yeah, the puff factor with that very cold air and those storms that we had in 13 and 14, a lot of those storms were very puffy, very fluffy, and they build up a lot, but they also were very easy to get rid of.
By the way, here's an interesting thing. Just noticed it, because I like to notice things. Give me a moment. Let me bring up. This is the new GFS, so take it for what it's worth. But here we are sitting and talking about ridge in the east and trough in the west, and I'm just looking up. Now it's not out far enough, so I don't know what it's going to do after this, but kind of looks a little different. We're at February 5th, and we're out to February 5th. And I don't know, Joe. I'm looking at this. The Aleutian Ridge is not quite as strong. There's lower pressures across much of Canada. There's still troughing in the east here on this. I mean, we would have, there's a little bit of a ridge after whatever happens, at the last trough that pulls out around February 1st or 2nd, but we don't really go into a big ridge position here. Now, here's the thing. Let me just point out though, because you look at this pattern and you say, okay, ridge in the west, trough in the east, ridge in the east, trough in the west. You're doesn't mean that you can't get snow events. Okay, every once in a while you can, and believe me, considering the chances that have gone by the boards here in the last 5 weeks with all this cold air, you can't possibly do, for snow lovers, you can't really possibly do any worse. But there is a way in this type of setup where you could get something, and the way it happens is you get, let's say you have the trough in the west, and I'm just going to kind of draw it. You got the ridge in the east. If you get something in the northern part of the jet where it's going to be colder in Canada, you get something to move along in the northern part of the jet where you flatten the ridge out. The ridge is still there, but it's, you're in one of these moments where it's the ridge is not flexing its muscle and punching up the eastern seaboard. It's getting suppressed, even though it's still sitting there, just kind of flattens out, say in the Gulf of Mexico and over Florida. So you get that ridge to suppress. You get a you get a trough that moves along the northern stream that comes along, and you get one of these big highs. You usually see this sometimes in a pattern like this, where you get these big cold highs that build from, say, the northern lakes into eastern Canada, but the cold air doesn't get far enough south because there's ridging in the upper atmosphere. So sometimes the lower levels get cold, but the upper levels stay warm. So what can happen sometimes is that if you can get that northern jet to press that ridge down and flatten it, and then something in the southern part that comes out of that trough in the west can move along underneath it, then you get one of these. You get one of these situations where you get some overrunning precip on a stalled frontal boundary, and you're north of the frontal boundary. You could get maybe a situation where you get like a supercharged warm front that moves northeastward that puts down a quick 3 to 6 inches as it goes by. I'm not predicting this, but I'm just saying that it's not an automatic slam dunk that the minute you go to a ridge in the east and a trough in the west that you can't have winter weather events. It's a matter of the weather systems and the short waves that you're dealing with have to time out perfectly in order to happen. And that's not exactly a controversial statement, because even in the best of patterns, you have to have everything time out perfectly, and you have to have the short waves in the right place, and you have to have the ridges in the right place. So I don't, I kind of look at these whenever my approach, Joe, has always been to just, okay, you look at the broad pattern, but you also have to look at what's going on in front of you, and sometimes what's going on in front of you may not necessarily match up with what you think you should be getting in terms of the overall broad pattern.
Well, now, after all of that, after that lovely soliloquy,
right,
explaining everything out or whatever, I now direct your attention, as several people on the chat board have been trying to direct our attention, to the solution for next Saturday morning by our dear friends up in Canada, the CPC.
Okay,
have you had a chance to look at that?
Nope, I will bring.
Have you had a chance to look at this?
I don't know. I haven't, Joe, because I've been doing the long range. All right, let's go to the Canadian. The Canadian model, which is, as you know, Joe, how I like to refer to the Canadian model is the model that the broken clock that writes that's right twice a day. It hits home runs every once in a while, and then in between, it just, at best it hits it gets hit by a pitch, or or gets on base with an on base error. All right, so first let me look at the 500, because I like to look at the 500 first. By the way, I'm not disparaging. It's a weather model. A couple of times when I've said that, I've gotten folks from Canada.
I might point out that about 2 or 3 years ago, they actually said that they had improved it. the new and improved Canadian to try to make it a bit better. So
yeah, but I will. Let me say this about the Canadian: the one storm that I remember distinctly that it did so well with was the Boxing Day storm. And the Canadian does seem to have a better handle when we go to a negative NAO. All right, now take a look. All right, folks, you see this? This is what goes back to what I said earlier. You got to get the trough to drop in further west, sharp. See where the axis is here? It's way back to the west. It's running from western Michigan down to the Florida Panhandle. And look at that V shape. Look how much sharper the trough is. It's already neutral. On the GFS, it doesn't get neutral until it's right on top of us. And this is the yesterday afternoon's run. It's actually almost identical to yesterday afternoon's run. So yeah, okay. If I'm not, I'm not throwing out the chance that the models could be too progressive. Maybe the Canadian is onto something. I don't know. I would say, given what we've been experiencing over the last couple of weeks, except for what happened last Sunday, everything has been, progressive and to the south. And of course, I will let me pull up the surface map, because you're not going to be happy until I pull up the surface map and take a look at it. And neither will I, by the way. So here we go. Here's the surface map. I'm trying to make sure that everybody's seeing it. Yeah, it's a burial on the Canadian.
See it.
Yeah, it's a burial.
Yeah.
It's a not. What is that? A 50?
In fact, Dennis Cassie, if you're still watching, Dennis, the Canadian forecast by 1 o'clock on next Saturday afternoon, 20 inches of snow for your part of Connecticut. I just thought I'd throw that out.
Well, here's what I would say. Every model that I've looked at, every model that I've looked at over the last 3 or 4 days has at some point shown this negatively tilted, wrapped up solution. The European has shown it at one point. In fact, the European showed it so much at one point it wanted to take a low up into central Pennsylvania. The GFS has shown it multiple times. The Canadian has shown it a couple of times. Then it goes to the offshore solution. Then it comes back and goes to the onshore solution. So I'm not discounting it. It's, as you said, Joe, it's Sunday. We're looking at talking about hour 132 and beyond. So,
yes.
We saw the storm last Sunday, the radical shifts that occurred inside 120 hours. So I'm just going to leave it at that. Over the next couple of days, we'll zero in on it. We'll figure it out. But remember what you're looking for. Deeper trough, further west, much sharper. That negatively tilted broom tilt that I showed at the beginning of the video, that's what you want. You don't want it too negative, and you don't want it too sharp too far left, because then you wind up with a low that goes up inland, and it's a coast hugger. So just remember that too. It's a fine line. You're talking about 60, 100 miles in either direction here. So you got to have it. You got to have it just right, and the odds of it having it just right, no matter which way, no matter where your perspective is, where you are geographically, the odds of having it just right are not especially high. Okay, so I think we probably can't say any more. I think we can't really say any more about this. We've actually said quite a bit. From a forecasting standpoint, not really saying very much, which is the way forecasters should operate when we're talking about in the long range. And I think, Mr. Rayo, you have Briller Jeopardy, because we had one left over from last week. Do you have it?
Yes, I'm going to pick it out right now. Oh, excuse me.
No, that's me.
You.
No, my throat's getting just a little bit dry. I'm going to get. You can keep talking because I can hear you. I'm just going to get a glass of water. Because I'm on a headset.
All right, while Mr. Giaffi gets his glass of water, let's point out also that again we're right at the start of we're coming down to the end of the month of January, mid midpoint of winter will be February 3rd, the day after Groundhog Day, and we're already halfway through what the meteorologists refer to as meteorological winter. They consider winter over at the end of February, although, as we are well aware, that doesn't always work out. There's still quite a bit of winter in March and sometimes even into the month of April. So I'm wondering here, Joe, if this is already. I'm wondering if I may not have Thriller Jeopardy.
Oh, maybe I have it. Hold on a second. By the way, Airy Mac hitting super chat just now. Thank you, Airy. Most appreciated. Yes, I have it. Okay, I'm sorry. So here we go. These are the average January high temperatures for the for these 10 cities, Joe, and 5 degrees is the margin of error. And let's see how you do. So you ready?
Yes, sir.
Average high temperature for the month of January. Okay, let's start out with Oklahoma City. Oklahoma, where the wind blows whistling down the plain.
You know, this is going to be tough because Oklahoma, as you know, is right smack in the middle of the country, and a lot of the cold air masses that break through from northern Canada sometimes plunge straight south. Before we call them Texas Northers, Oklahoma gets the lion's share of those kind of systems, and so you say to yourself, "Oh, well, they're in the south, or you know, they probably are rather warm." Maybe not necessarily true. So, and I'm going to have to. Oklahoma City. I'm going to say for Oklahoma City, average January temperature 48.
Well, you know something? About as close as you could be to being on the nose, except not being on the nose. 49. Very good.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Phoenix,
Arizona. Well, Phoenix is out in the desert southwest. They are not usually prone to get frigid or cold air masses. So I'm going to say for Phoenix, average January temperature of 64.
Good. 68. So you got that 5-degree margin of error. Pittsburgh.
Well, Pittsburgh probably being inland from well inland, and to get the cold weather. How about for Pittsburgh? How about 30, 31?
36. So you're.
Wait a minute. Oh. I said to myself, what? 6 degrees for an average?
36.
No,
so that's
36.
That's within 5, but just so. Portland, Oregon.
Portland, Oregon, I would say Portland, Oregon. How about for Portland, Oregon? How about 42?
Within the margin of 5, 46. Rochester, New York.
Rochester, well, 36. How about 35?
33. 33. Salt Lake City.
Salt Lake City, where they say the greatest snows on earth occur in Utah. I'll say 38.
Very good. 39. San Diego, where it's the same thing. 350 days out of 365. Same thing.
How about 69?
66. WNBC. San Francisco. I left my heart in San Francisco. Actually, I left my money there, too. San Francisco.
Oh, how about 59?
Very good, Joe. 58. The current
I'm hot today.
The current snow capital of the world of the East Coast, Virginia Beach, Virginia.
Um, 43.
Yeah, the first one you didn't get in the margin of error, 51.
Wow.
And
I figured it might be warm because of the coastal thing, but I didn't think it would be that warm. Yeah.
last but not least is Washington D.C. and Washington D.C. for the month of January.
40.
45. 45.
Just there. Just got in there.
Correct. So
Yeah.
you're done good. You got 9 out of 10, which is great. I see the chat board is playing along. So it's, you know what? It's 12:15, and a certain DOG is waiting to go to the PARK so that he can PLAY with his FRIENDS. Well, you know what? Right before the show, for
Well,
like 30 minutes before the show, he was just really clamoring at me because he usually when we go to the PARK, it's in the morning. And
right.
anyway, I took him 20 minutes to finally calm down. So he's he's doing what he usually does, and hopefully what most people aren't doing during the show is he's laying on the side of the couch, totally asleep, waiting for me to finish. So time to wrap
And
it up.
thank all of you. And thank all of you. We had approximately 200 to 250 viewers, and we still managed, Joe, somehow to get 132 likes, which is good.
Yes, and you know what? For a Sunday morning when people are out doing things and spending the day in activities, or even though it is cold in most places, including here, the it's it's a nice crowd for a Sunday morning. So you and I will be back tomorrow night at the usual shopping time, 7:30 Eastern. Do you have any plans this week that will cause delays?
No, nothing really significant in the immediate future. We'll have my son and my daughter-in-law here for dinner this afternoon, and boy, they do taste good. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah. What's she making?
I believe we're having pork shoulder tonight
Oh, nice.
and butternut squash.
Oh, very good. Love the combination. Love the combination very much. Okay, let's say goodbye. Folks, thanks for being here. Loved having you. Hope you'll be back on tomorrow, 7:30 Eastern Time. That's going to be our schedule all week. If there is a storm threat at the end of the week, it probably means we'll be going beyond Thursday. But for now, we are definitely going to be on the next 4 days: it's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday
Yes,
at 7:30 Eastern Time. So have a great Sunday, and we will see you tomorrow. Say goodbye.
absolutely.
Say
Good
goodbye,
night.
Joe.
Goodbye, Joe.